So why do we do anything? Why am I meditating? The feeling of quality. And then, of course, that's a two-part thing, feeling it. The quality's always there. What we really want to do is fill our bubble of perception with a feeling of quality, a feeling of timelessness. Ida, when you sit down to make art, you don't want to make something that people just look at. And a musician doesn't want to make music that people just listen to, or just hear. They really want them to listen to it. You want them to feel the art, not just look at it. You don't want to just looking and seeing it and feeling it are real two different things. You can tell when you meet somebody, are they really seeing you? Are they hearing what you have to say? Is there a feeling exchange occurring between the two people, or are we just talking? Like, is this just, sound waves bouncing off of you? Because it's like we're not even really communicating right now. We're not feeling each other. We're not vibing, as the young ones would say. So why am I doing anything? So what you were discussing, like the way that you were talking about it, reminded me of it just a scene like just popped into my head where we were at the park in Champaign and Long was teaching us Tai Chi on Sundays, and we were going every Sunday. It was about maybe 7 or 8 of us, I think. Sometimes just me and maybe one other person, but yeah, so we would meet every single Sunday. And I remember one Sunday, I think it was in the fall, because I remember like that smell, and Shayna and I have been talking about it, but it's apparently humans can smell the water or moisture in the soil, like to an nth degree of parts per million or whatever. But so I remember that. And I remember, we were doing our standing meditation and doing, our warm-ups and everything. And I don't remember what spurred him to say this, but he said that Tai Chi is not here to relax you. Like you're not doing your Tai Chi to relax. And I think it was because I was also doing Tai Chi Fit at the time, which is an amazing, fun, enjoyable thing to do, but it's different than the way that he teaches, right? So there was constantly this, I would be like, "Oh, but this person said," and he's like, "Well, okay, but that's not what I said." So choose whatever you want to do. These are kind of opposing things. Of course, I found ways to put them together. I don't think things are always opposing. They put them together and you get something interesting. But there were so many times when my teacher would say something and I would just be like, boy, that's stupid. Like I don't know what to do with that other than just shake my head and forget it. And then of course I don't forget it. I remember it 20 years or 15 years or whatever, however long it's been later. Probably less than that. It's probably less than I think. Probably like 9 years or so. But so it took maybe that amount of time for me to understand what he was talking about. And I think that that also applies to meditation because we're talking about more of a formal meditative practice. And so what I learned is that he was right, that if I am already relaxed when I come to do, that's what the warm up is for. That's what the Qigong is for. That's why you're doing it in the park. All of these things are supposed to help interrupt the normal stream of your internal processes so that you can create some space to do some energetic, you know, chi moving exercises. That's the idea. And he said that. He's like, well, that's why we do our warm-ups extra slow. And that's why we do these wavy hand things back and forth. That's why we do our standing meditation. We do these things so that we can relax and then do our Tai Chi. And I was like, oh, well, that's still, I don't know. That seems to everybody else, you're the only dude telling me that Tai Chi's not to relax. Everybody else is telling me the opposite. So of course I just, what do I think? I just do Tai Chi and I try to compare and contrast and see what is he talking about. And I found that my ability to do Tai Chi, which fundamentally should have absolutely no word in your mind. That's something you don't do with Tai Chi. You don't have words in your mind, right? Of course, that's a process and it's not the easiest thing in the world. But ideally, you want to be completely present with Tai Chi. It's a meditative practice, right? And it is formal because you're doing it typically at a certain space, at a certain time, in a certain way, and it's very ritualistic at times, right? So all of those things play into it. Yeah, so we're moving energy, cultivating energy. So the idea was we wanted to be relaxed before we did our Tai Chi because otherwise we weren't really moving energy or cultivating energy. We were just trying to not think. We were just trying to relax our muscles and our body. And of course, every time you try, it gets worse. You try not to think, it gets worse. If you don't have a plan, especially. And then the plan, one of the plans that Ida mentioned in formal meditation, of course, is using specific, deliberate, and intentional words as opposed to involuntary processes that just keep reoccurring that are very likely repetitive, habitual, and don't inspire you and make you feel well. Okay. Now, I also found that that is consistent with, so I have two main points to make about formal meditation, and this is the first one. So the first one is I actually found the same principle to be true when I sit down, however I choose to sit down or stand, because that's also very formal, right? That I'm doing it in a particular way at a particular time, and I have it set up, and that's what I'm going to do it. That's how I'm going to do it. And Ida's right. That builds personal power, intention, and will. I intended to do it at 4. I intended to not look at my phone. I intended to not go do these other things, and I did it. Intention, will, personal power. Pay attention to it, charge it. So that's it. That's all good. But what I noticed for me, and this is where the Ernest factor perhaps and your factor comes in as well, is that the success of my Tai Chi and the success of any formal practice was directly proportional to the, in air quotes, success of my informal practices going into it. So if I had a time, maybe 9 a.m. is when I'm going to do my standing meditation. I really do it in the kitchen about 8 a.m. So Shane is doing something, and so the kitchen is a nice long space. I can do a little bit of movement and standing or whatever. Well, if I go into that and I'm not practicing my informal practice, it's not settled. It's and that's going to bring it to the second point, but there's something missing from the Tai Chi that I'm doing because before I did the Tai Chi, I wasn't as relaxed. However, I also noticed this is experientially, so I'm just noticing consistencies and anomalies, what's really going on here, paying attention to myself and how I feel. And then I was like, okay, I was really locked in on my practice today. And I really noticed that as soon as I started to get into my Tai Chi posture, I was there. I was rooted. I could feel my chi moving better. I wasn't thinking about not thinking. I wasn't thinking about how I shouldn't be thinking about not thinking, but I'm still thinking about that thinking. And that's a lot of thinking. And that's not necessarily the deliberate and intentional and specific thinking that we intended to think at the outset, right? And that's a lot. And it's kind of like opposing forces when really what we're doing is we're trying to harmonize forces rather than oppose anything in that meditative posture. So same thing. If I want to sit down in a meditative posture and do whatever I'm hoping to, I guess that's a third point I want to make about the meditation. So if I sit down, I want to do something with the meditation. Well, if I was practicing my informal practices in my 4 directions before, I just couldn't help but notice how much easier I like slid into place in terms of what I wanted to do in that meditation. If it's a standing meditation, I want a well, any meditation, I would really appreciate a good, strong structural integrity. but I don't want to be sitting there thinking about and pondering and making all of these adjustments necessarily either. But what's one aspect of my informal practice? It's my structural integrity. It's my body or my internal point of attention. So if I have my internal point of attention active right before I go and do my formal meditation, it's easier. I don't have to do that. Cognitive direction. If I have my cognitive direction locked in and like I'm already noticing the silence behind the sound, I'm already seeing and I can really feel the aliveness and the vibrancy. And I'm like, oh, 9 o'clock, time to go meditate. What is the quality of the meditation compared to, fuck, 9 o'clock? Okay, I'm going to go meditate. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to not think. Do you see the difference in the quality of the beginning point? And then, of course, that's going to affect the quality of when you're in it. So, bottom line for this point is that the desire, which is going to lead to the second point, maybe I should have made the second point the first point, but it is what it is. And then I'm probably going to forget one of the points between now and then. So is my meditative practices in terms of formal practices and what I want from them are directly proportional to my informal practice going into it and coming out of it. And I think that's like that's pretty obvious to me. Now, it wasn't always obvious to me, and that's what Long was trying to say. He's like, well, if your Tai Chi in your mind is good when you come to the park, well, all of our, beginning things that we do with our breathing and everything, you're going to be relaxed. And then your Tai Chi, you can really learn a whole lot more. Does that first point make sense? That's just a relative to the four directions. So if my four directions practice is consistent, then and it's strong and it's active to some degree, right? Then my formal practice is going to be a reflection of that as well. So my goal is to make sure that I go into my formal practices because frankly, if I am redirecting because of maybe an emotional response or something going on, maybe I'm a little bit stressed because of school and I got a lot of things going in my brain, and just the sheer volume creates taxation. Well, maybe sitting and meditating isn't what I want to do. Maybe moving is going to be a little bit better because I need to move my chi. Does that make sense? That first point? I think it's a fair point to make, and it's not always going to be the case. I get it, but I think it's valid.
It applies to everything though, doesn't it? Like if your informal practice is in place and or your formal practice is in place, then you weather the wobble of
Exactly.
stepping out of practice and back into practice more elegantly than if it's not, right?
Yep. Okay, here's point number 2. So there came a time where I realized I didn't know why I was doing stuff. If and of course it was probably Long, it was probably Inner Guru at a certain point. It's just like, Ernest, why do you do this? And I'm like, I don't I'm trying to trace it back. And of course, things are revealed to me. And I'm like, oh, that's why I do that. But that's a different scenario than trying to sit there and think, okay, yeah, why do I do this? What do I want from this? What is the desire? What is the intention? Where is the will? I can always look at anything in the human experience in this fashion, and things will be revealed to me. There's an underlying desire behind meditation. The desire to have no desire is still a desire. If you want to be Buddha, you want to be Buddha. If you want to be, you want that. I mean, it's just so obvious. And it is basic psychology, of course. We seek what we want, what can benefit us. The spirit does that. The physical body does that too. So the spirit also wants to be nourished. It wants to evolve. The human body, it wants to be nourished. It wants to grow. It wants to be strong. It wants to evolve. We see this in nature. It wants to. Sometimes, the universe is a fickle thing, and sometimes it doesn't work out all the time. Things are constantly moving and changing. But what I realized is that I don't always know what I want, and that's important. So what do I want from my formal meditative practice? It's the same thing that I want in any of my. Donna is gonna, of course, after I think each point that I make in each segment, it's like, well, that goes for everything. Yeah, because it's principle based. I think that should be a reoccurring thing. If I say something and you're like, well, no, that's only super specific to this maybe one scenario, it could be lacking a foundation of principle, whatever was said. So this is the same thing. It really is the same for everything. What do I want? Okay, so if I use death as my advisor and I know that I have a finite time before yin and yang separate, what do I want? Quality. That's a perfect word for it, right? We want that's seeing. We want to, and seeing is feeling it with your eyes. It's heavily eye dependent. Shen, according to Chinese medicine, can be seen in the eyes. Don Juan would talk about a shine. And I'm like, well, that's stupid. And then all of a sudden we saw that. We've seen that in people in Arizona. Shana and I told that story of the Nancy, her name is Nancy. But it was a story. We would talk of synchronicity. So why do we do anything? Why am I meditating? The feeling of quality. And then, of course, that's a two-part thing, feeling it. The quality's always there. What we really want to do is fill our bubble of perception with a feeling of quality, a feeling of timelessness. Ida, when you sit down to make art, you don't want to make something that people just look at. And a musician doesn't want to make music that people just listen to, or just hear. They really want them to listen to it. You want them to feel the art, not just look at it. You don't want to just looking and seeing it and feeling it are real two different things. You can tell when you meet somebody, are they really seeing you? Are they hearing what you have to say? Is there a feeling exchange occurring between the two people, or are we just talking? Like, is this just, sound waves bouncing off of you? Because it's like we're not even really communicating right now. We're not feeling each other. We're not vibing, as the young ones would say. So why am I doing anything? I will not sit down and meditate and be like, well, that was all right, or I would have rather done something different, but boy, I did it. So yeah, that is intention and will, but to me, that doesn't feel like I went up the mountaintop, a very difficult task, but in a very smooth and effortless type of way. It feels like I was struggling a little bit. And so for me personally, and I'm just sharing, how does that relate to the four directions and some of these fundamental principles? Feeling is important. It should feel smoother than that. So there's something, maybe I didn't set up my four directions practice very well before I went into the formal meditation, or maybe there's something that keeps reoccurring that needs to be maybe, I want to say maybe worked out or addressed or paid attention to before I get into that meditative state or attempt to get into that meditative state. So why am
Yes,
I doing? Yeah, go ahead.
I think the feeling that came up there when you were asking why you are doing the meditation is, for me, I sort of feel that why I'm doing it is I want to remain open and connected really to source and to just kind of grow with that, whatever that is, just to be connected
Okay.
really, and to feel peace and space. Peace and space and connection are my main aims when I meditate. And if
Okay.
something magical comes out of that, well and good. And if not, well, at least I've sat down for 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's fair.
Can I say something? I used to
Mhm.
that is the ultimate goal for me as well, what I want. But it's, I found that to be too broad a, a goal for a specific practice. So, I try to make it a little more specific, like, what's available in this moment? What's available in this moment, in this space, in my bubble of perception, in my awareness, at my current state of being right now, that wouldn't be available because of the distraction of not meditating. Like, um, I have a practice that I attempt to embody all day long, but when I'm still, uh, it's different. It's a different practice when I'm sitting still. So sometimes I will just sit to see what's available that perhaps I'm not hearing, seeing, feeling, connecting with because of my busyness. That's all, just what's available right here in this space. Sometimes when I'm walking, I feel like that's a meditative practice, especially along the water on the boardwalk. But I'm moved to or inspired to just stop somewhere, just light somewhere like a bird does, or a fly does, or a dragonfly does. Just light somewhere and see what's available in that, in this moment, in that space. Um, so there's a quality of stillness and allowing that I want to expand into, and sometimes I have to be still to do it. Or I recognize it's easier to access if I'm still. Just being here in class, we haven't done it regularly and consistently for a while. So just doing it now made me realize how, oh, there's a familiar set of data points that I'm remembering about sitting in this class. And it brings me to the present moment more fully than if I just sat down to eat this orange that I ate. I don't even know if I would have sat down. I might have eaten it while I was doing other things. And I recognized that peeling the orange and stacking the peeled skin and feeling the texture of it and the explosion of flavor that an orange has in my taste buds was so much more appreciated and allowed. It's the same batch of oranges that I ate one, well, I ate three actually yesterday. I didn't have the same experience with that orange because I am in a more meditative state right now in class. So I think that the quality of things is what, and yes, death is an advisor. That's always where I start. This is my life. This is my moment. There's a finite time for me to be this ego identity of Donna Angolia, having this experience for whatever things I chose to experience when I came, and I choose every day. So it deserves my attention, deserves my presence, um, and the quality of the aspects of it are more appreciated, recognized, and experienced if I'm in that state. So that just this is a formal practice to me, and I forgot about it. I forgot um, how when I set up all these points to practice with intention and will, how much is available in that space. So something specific for a meditation is a help works for me a little better than just being connected. I have to make it a game or an inspiration or bring imagination into it or just allow. There's the I don't know what was going to happen in class. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but it's still a practice. no matter what we talk about. And what's available in this container that I call class.
Yeah. Okay, so I made notes because there's a lot of good points here. A lot of Don Juan or Warrior's Way type of discussion as well, I think, on based on what you guys presented. Now the thing is though, every single thing that I wrote down there is all still just the same thing. It's how we want to feel. We can't have a word for something if we haven't experienced it. And if we've experienced it, we experienced it as a feeling. That's what we forget. Experience itself is a feeling. It's a sensation, right? That's why we call it sensory experience. Experience is a sensational thing. Take away all of the sensations and it's a black void. Take away the ability to maybe the ability to talk to yourself, and now it's a very quiet black void. And that doesn't sound great to me personally. I don't know. So look at all of these different words. So source, peace, space, connection, availability, stillness, allowing, quality. Death is our advisor. I would start with, for me, because the first consideration for me in terms of the warrior principles is death is my advisor. Now, we're going to do a little one-to-one. Death is my advisor. What does that feel like? If we're talking about it, it's got to be a feeling. And I think understanding that, and Roger, when he does Traeger approach, one of the things he wants to do is introduce a feeling that maybe they've never felt, or maybe they have forgotten, or maybe that they just need to, in some other way, remember, so that they can remember that feeling and we can have what we've come to call in this group emotional memory. Being able to reproduce the same soup or a similar soup, okay, similar soup. Feels. What does it feel like? Death is an advisor. For Donna, it feels like opportunity. If opportunity itself has a feeling to you, then that's something that you can see. And then this is the tricky thing when we talk about feeling, is because we're using words to describe our own unique experience. Despite them being unique, there's a lot of similarities. And so sometimes those words can be shared. And we're like, yeah, that's a word. I'm on with that word. That word feels to me like it represents what I'm trying to describe in terms of the feeling of my experience. So death as advisor feels like opportunity. For me, what I do with death as an advisor gets me to the feeling of appreciation, because death inspires me to live. What do? I do my four directions practice, because the only way that I have found to reliably, consistently, to the extent that I want to meet my desire, is to find appreciation for the moment using death as my advisor. So if space junk falls from the sky or a tidal wave reaches Chicago, Illinois in some way, wait, I don't want to use that one because we do sit on a large body of water. I don't know how that would happen, but I still don't want to use that one. Space junk falls from the sky because that's much less likely. I hope at that moment that I was in a state feeling appreciation for the opportunity to exist. Oh, I should mention that. This is a fundamental appreciation. Yeah, it's still appreciation for something, because that's how appreciation works. But it's appreciation for this breath. It's appreciation for this opportunity to exist. So for me, I get it. Yeah, it does feel like opportunity, the opportunity to feel appreciation for my life. I start with that. That's my I'm up at 4:30. That's my 4:31 goal. That's what I want. That's my desire. And I'll just be very clear about that. Desire, intention, and will. That is my desire. It's in my heart. I desire to feel appreciation. Of course, there's a lot of things that go into that, like dissolving psychological time. If I'm just thinking about getting done with work, or I'm like, oh my God, I did so bad on that quiz all day. Well, how the hell is that feeling appreciation for anything? I'm not using death as my advisor. Space junk could fall from the sky, and there I was moping about something that in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years is going to mean absolutely diddly squat. It was one stupid quiz, Ernest. This might sound like how I talk to myself sometimes when I do start to feel that, right? I ended up with a 90%, and I already sent a lengthy email to the teacher talking about how hard it was. And I know he's thinking it. He's like, Ernest, you spent all this time and you got a 90%. Like, chill. Like, calm down. And of course, I did, I'm able to do that pretty quickly. Edit my email so it sounds much more friendly. Before, I would have sent that lengthy email and I would have regretted it because I'd have been, oh, that wasn't professional or nice. It was purely emotional. Okay, that's one of the first words that we use. So death as an advisor is the quality of things. Quality of things. So for me, that's not the place necessarily to begin. For me personally, the quality of things is dependent on some of those words that also the source of things, feeling source, those are dependent on some of these other words that I have to feel first. If I don't feel these things, I'm probably just hustling myself. It's like love. If the love in air quotes that I'm feeling isn't coming from peace, space, connection, might be something else entirely. Pay attention to where that feeling of love is coming from. If it's coming from a little bit, too below, it might be something else entirely. So I think that's maybe a nice place to go next. So I of course, I start with that. In that 1 minute from 4:30 to 4:31, I found peace, space, connection. Not necessarily in that order. Wait, so space first. I have to create space. If there's no space, then what if that's your glass of water is already full example. If I don't have any space, well, what am I doing? That is, I think, could be, I'm just trying to interpret what you guys are saying, but I think that maybe is the availability that Donna is talking about. We create that space, we make ourselves available because there is something in that bubble of perception that I have created that I can collaborate with. And maybe I didn't have it in mind to begin with. It's not always a new feeling, but it wasn't a planned feeling. And you dance with it and you're like, oh, all right, I'm going to remember this the more I dance with it. And that's emotional memory. It's just like every other kind of memory. The more time you spend with the concept and the more ways that you engage that concept, maybe with pictures, maybe with words, maybe with audio, some sort of sensory way, some sort of memory, like chain to another memory way. However you do it, it requires some attention. So it's the same thing, maybe you find something, Donna, in the moment. It's a unique moment. There's a lot of unique aspects to it. We're making ourselves available and then we find it. And then we're not trying to control it, but we dance with it in a manner speaking to remember it later.
Opportunity for me and availability is the same thing in this context. But it is always new. And that is where I can get excited about and inspired to focus my attention and will, because I can have a memory of the lane of appreciation. I can have a memory of the lane of opportunity. It's like the lane of class. Okay, my posture, I sit here, I arrive, but every time it's something new, the dots line up, the data lines up in a different way. Um, I just posted about the flock of birds and how they change shape, in the air. You could see that every time you go walk. And there's that flock of birds, but it's never going to be the same. Like, it's never going to be the same thing. There's always going to be something different about it. Where you place your attention, what the temperature on your skin is at the time, what degree of momentum of thought did you have when you decided to slow it down and widen and open to that? like it's always going to be different. So that's what makes it exciting for me. What's available? What's available in this moment that I can expand my presence and awareness and points of attention and all the things we talk about so that I can receive it at this moment. It's always different. If you can really quiet your mind and allow that opportunity. So yeah, when the space junk falls from the sky, I hope I am in the widest allowance that I've been able to achieve at this time, at the moment that that occurs, and every moment thereafter. And that's what I aspire to. I'm I'm never fully embodied. It's all to degrees, but I don't score keep that. Um, it's just more available the more I do it.
Mhm. Well, I would say it is 2 degrees, but if you're doing it to any degree, then you are embodying at that moment at least. Right. So that was just a quick correction. Hope you don't mind.
No,
Yeah.
it's a
So
really important correction.
yeah, I mean, so everything that everything we're talking about is pretty similar. So the 4 directions creates the bubble of perception for me. And the stronger and more valid and more stable my bubble of perception is, that's the space and the availability for the connection and the peace. That's kind of a primary thing for the other stuff. I used to talk about things in terms of gates, right? Because I was just mentioning that, you might be feeling something emotional. Is that source? Is that really love? How do we know? Well, we know. How do we know that this was a creative, inspired idea? How do we know it was intuition? Because usually either something happens that suspends it, like something traumatic, something really brand new, and you've never seen it before. And it's like your mind just goes blank for a second. And then right through there comes something. What just came through there? Well, that's the stuff. That's those other stuffs, the source, and some of those other more specific things that may be quality that Donna was talking about. Now, so in terms of practice, it's for a feeling. I know that I want something out of what I'm doing. And I really like that Eva just listed that out. Donna just listed that out. What are those things that we want from it? So if I'm doing my 4 directions practice and I have an established bubble of perception to any degree, I'm embodying it in that moment, there will be peace. The more that I can practice redirection, especially if I want to, there will be space in the thinking specifically. And then if there's peace and space, there is connection. The other stuff takes care of itself. It's going to handle. So the warrior principle that Donna has stumbled upon, either intentionally or unintentionally, is making yourself available to spirit. The mood of a warrior is specifically for that purpose, because you're making yourself available to spirit. Here's the kicker. So I love the way that Donna talks about newness. What is the opposite of newness?
Habit, repetitive.
Habit's a good word. Repetitive's okay. I think those felt like they had almost a negative connotation to them.
Okay, you want a non-negative, familiar.
Just the opposite. Yeah, so familiar. Okay, so something new, and the opposite of something new is familiar. Okay, something new, or how about something unchanging and something changing, right? Those are two opposites. Well, I do agree that the presentation of the present moment is always new. How it moves has a lot of consistency to it, right? It
Yeah,
happens
the
to be
principles apply.
the principles apply. Yeah. The principles come from how things move. So that's a consistency. And I'm okay with newness. I love it. It feels great. However, when I take, so I'll just say I made the error one time, and I'm not saying Donna is doing this. I just thought it was a really good time to go a little bit deeper in this concept. this isn't, I know that Donna's not doing this actually. Probably just really good for me to review, but also good to put the review out there and we can talk about it also later. But there was a time maybe where I was chasing new. That's all I wanted was, I was like, new, 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 new. I want this fresh experience. And I get that. That makes sense. It should be there. But then I found out that if that's all I focused on, I was forgetting, I wasn't focusing on what is consistent, what is stable, principles. Okay, so that's one, attention itself. And that connects me to the what Ida was saying was source. So hopefully I can touch on that a little bit for you. So when I talk about source, I try to talk about it in a way that I can say, okay, so what does this feel like? Source. What am I going to say? And I know it's erroneous, whatever I say, it feels like, but that's okay. I want to put a word to it at least so I can maybe remember it. I can ponder it if I feel that's necessary at some point. I can do that if I want to. So, source has a feeling, otherwise we wouldn't be describing it. There would be no word for it. You know, it has to be a part of our experience in some way. So that's why we're talking about it. I would say that whatever it is, peace, space, connection, those things are prerequisites. Probably going to have to have some space in all of the thinking and all of the emotional turmoil and all of the habits and all of the things that I'm doing that isn't making me feel good to even come close to wiping all of that away enough that I'm like, source. Or something can happen to where it just wipes away on its own. That could be, like we said, it could be a traumatic event. It could be something that's happening in your family life that just wipes that away. It's like a stop on a dime type of thing, brush with spirit type of thing. So the Don Juan principle, the warrior principle, is to create the mood that helps us to become more available to things like, so we make that availability to become more accessible to things like source, more accessible to that feeling of what does source feel like. And the reason I mention that is because it requires opposites to exist. It's that third thing when we put them together. So I happen to notice, and this is just me, and I'm just sharing, one of my blunders is I started to just really focus on, I wanted everything to be new. I wanted new experiences. I wanted new people. I wanted new drugs. I wanted new music. I wanted new electronics. I wanted new this, new that. And now that's a very erroneous way of feeling the newness. That's not what Donna was talking about at all. I get that. But I'm just sharing my error because it's the error that helped me correct it. And then I was like, oh, even when I sit down to do my formal meditation, I'm ignoring the unmanifested opposite, or what we would call the more consistent. So I noticed in that moment that, oh shit, awareness itself, I don't really feel that change. So I couldn't help but notice that in that moment, I recognized that the one thing that seemed to change the least was attention itself. Awareness of my awareness, which one, if they're young enough, will call metacognition. Awareness of awareness itself. And then I was like, oh my gosh, when I do that, I feel source energy. I feel a connection to the infinitely changing and the infinitely unchanging at the same time. And I was like, oh, that's different. There's a lot of quality when I bring those two opposites together. Hey, give me just a second, okay? Ida, is this making sense how I'm trying to put these things
I
together?
actually got a feeling there when you were talking about, before you brought up awareness, that you were being unfaithful to the true loyalty of the awareness that's always there. I wasn't putting that word on it, but it was like the the feeling that I get when I'm uh, really good at practice. That feeling that you get, that oh, how do I describe that? That feeling that you get, it's like the same as a marriage. You're I'm proud of it because it's given me personal power that you've got the ability to stay with something. And when you were talking there about all the newness, I was thinking about the old familiar that is a good thing,
Mhm.
not. And it was
Right.
awareness that you were talking about. When you mentioned awareness, I thought, yes, that's it. That's the it's not ordinary at all, but it's the ordinary that can be taken for granted. I feel,
Absolutely.
you know,
Yes.
that's
Bingo.
all. So, yeah.
That's it. That's one of the main. So why, Ernest, why do you do any of this? Because I actually have found in my own experience that there is no such thing as ordinary and unordinary. See, that's the thing. That's one of the interesting, the human mind can manifest apparitions of opposites, but it's really just either exist or not exist. That's the opposite of something is different than the non-existence of something. So the opposite of running isn't just, not running. Opposite of running could be sitting.
I have to tell you that I went almost down a rabbit hole with that when I had the awareness that you're both describing, the awareness of awareness itself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the opposite, the duality thing. I everything I looked at, it was making my head spin actually for a while because I was too focused on the thought about it. But everything had the opposite within it because nothing is one thing. It's always both things, the light and the shadow, that kind of thing. And so the newness, this is brand new in this moment. This is a creative new place that I have never been. And if I have never been there, then it didn't exist. But there's a familiar, but it's so familiar. Every new thing had a element of remembering of a of something that I already knew. And then I could spin on that for a long time. Like, okay, like everything I did, I noticed the opposite, the duality of it in itself. And that was a rabbit hole that I was in for a while that I was like, oh, stop. Because but once that became a practice, seeing the yin yang in everything I'm looking at or experiencing, then it was an expansive feeling. And it was, but I was spinning on it for a while because I was trying to make thoughts and words about it, which made me spin. But yes, the duality of everything I was really stuck in that space, but I wasn't stuck in it. I was just navigating through an expanding awareness. And my ego mind and my um spirit mind were having a little conversation argument about it. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
disruptive, but it was confounding for a while. And then until I stopped allowing it to be, until I stopped having a conversation in my head about it. I didn't need narration.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the duality I was really navigating that for a while. And now it's just there. It's a part of my awareness because I can't have one without the other. It's part of a as complete as I can see it now, as
Mm-hmm.
my capacity allows.
Yeah. Yeah. And that all ties into the warrior principles. So the warrior principles are all there.
Yes. And then it was every morning I would open my eyes and go, not try to remember my dream, not try anything, just go, uh, uh, who am I now? Like, who am I today? Like, I felt like it, once I allowed that awareness, the expansive nature of my awareness was palpable to me so that when I woke up in the morning, I had to reorient to who am I now? Where am I now? Where is my like It was like an adventure. Okay, what are we doing now with this?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So put the 3 points together. Like whenever you can, work on the 3 points. So you have why? What's the desire? Do you even know? And then of course, because it's this group, it's really what's the feeling? What's the feeling that you're really hoping to achieve with this meditation, with this walk, with this movement practice, this dancing, this dinner, this social event that you're about to attend? What is the feeling? And, of course, everything over a period of time, I could just slowly trace it back to what, and this is another reason that I'm, working with my teacher. He's Buddhist, and then he went to the city of 10,000 Buddhas and came back 10,000 more percent Buddhist than he was when he left. And he went from one extreme to another, and I couldn't help but notice that. And I could see that imbalance, and the desire to have no desire was just, it just didn't make any sense to me. It's like, okay, I can understand the desire to minimize desires. I can understand the desire to make desires more like what we're talking about, where it's more fundamental and foundational to our experience. I get that. I'm with you. But no desire, it's like, what are you even talking about? I don't get it. So forget that crap, is what I said to myself. If you That's your thing, that's your thing. But I'm like, no, let's identify 3 points in space and time. What is my desire? What is my intention? What is my will? Do I know that? Of course, what is my will is a tricky one, because you don't ask yourself that, you just do it. That's the just do energy. Right. But the first one, I want to know, what's the feeling I really want from this? Okay, I know what feeling I really want from this, and then I intend it. How do I intend it? Through practice, through the practice. So then I just, in some way, set up my practice to intend that feeling. It gets easier and quicker depending on the circumstances. There's a lot of factors that go into intending how you want to feel. That's filling your bubble of perception. And it's a highly adaptable, fun process, I think. All that makes sense? Other warrior principles, because there's actually quite a few. So we're making ourselves available. Why do we want to do the things that we do? There were so many times that maybe it's sitting down to meditate, and I didn't really know why. um I don't What am I really trying to get from this? What am I really trying to get from anything? Why am I walking so fast? What am I trying to get from that? Why am I talking to this person the way that I'm talking? What am I trying to get from them? What do I want? What is the desire? Because that's there. Duh, that's why you're doing anything, is because why are you going to the refrigerator? Because you're hungry. The desire is to eat, you know? Why did your head just go this direction? Because that sexy person just walked by. Well, because you're a biological entity, and there's things that your body wants. There's things that your spirit wants. The spirit and the body want very different things, though. Or they seem different, but they're contextual opposites that, when combined, create a new third thing. I have to pay attention to the Hun, ethereal spirit, but I can't neglect the corporeal, the Po aspect. And that's built into the four directions, by the way. The Hun I can put into the cognitive direction of attention. The physical body is already there in the internal direction of attention. So it just really goes back to, where's my four directions of attention? Because if I'm not doing that, everything that we've talked about so far is, we're just talking. We're going to just be talking theory and hypothesis and cool, but it's not how to cross the divide between theory and application. That comes with the four directions. That's how I do it.